Hello everybody. I wanted to do a little bit different type of video. I did my intro video a few months ago just telling you who I was and what the channel is going to be about. I did say I was going to do reviews and talk about paddles every now and then. This video in particular is just going to be talking about different types of paddle technology. There's a term that I don't know who made it popular, but it is popular at this point that there's different generations. There's Gen 1, 1.5, 2, 3, and I think we're now at 4, maybe even 4.5 depending on who you ask. So this video is just going to break that down a little bit. I'm just going to try to leave it in an intro video for new players that are looking to buy a new paddle. You'll see these terms, you'll hear some different things, and I'm trying to do my best I can to break that down, at least until what I know it now. I'm not a pro. I'm not like a hardcore reviewer. I don't really know as much as the next guy, but I think I know a little bit at least when it comes to talking to a beginner and when you're buying your first paddle. When you're looking to spend maybe more than $50 or maybe even $100. Like there's great options out there as long as you know where to look. So we'll start at the beginning. Generation 1. So Gen 1 paddles are overall not that popular now, but this was the first time ever where the face of a paddle was completely changed. It was still polypropylene, which are these little like honeycomb cells that are in the paddle, and you'll see that when you start hitting a lot, it'll show up in like ball dust or something like that. But Gen 1 introduced new face layups, particularly raw carbon fiber, which is by far the standard at this point, and most paddles you'll see have raw carbon fiber on the front. It honestly introduced spin. Up until this point, most people were using graphite or maybe even fiberglass, and that had power, but pretty had no spin at all. And the introduction of the spin just got more players interested in it, particularly ping pong players started jumping into the sport, and this was a very popular time to be excited about pickleball. There is one huge model that is still used today by, I would say, even expert players and probably some of the best single players out there, Hunter Johnson being one of them, which is the Paddletech TKO. This is an amazing paddle. It hits ridiculously hard. However, a Gen 1 paddle, due to its construction, doesn't have the most amazing sweet spot, but it has very good durability, very good spin, and the Paddletech in particular has amazing power. But I want to say that's standard across all Gen 1s. I think the Paddletech just hits crazy hard, which is awesome. So the next generation is actually kind of like a half step. It's called Generation 1.5, and this introduced foam for the first time in a paddle, particularly on the edges, and very little. The idea behind that was it was going to make the construction of the paddle more solid and easier to do overall. However, at the same time, it added weight on the perimeter, and when you add weight on the perimeter, it makes the stability and the sweet spot amazing. And 1.5 is still very popular today. I think the most popular model you're going to see out in the wild is the Vatic Prism Flash, Vatic Pro Prism Flash. It's a blackface paddle with a little purple signia in the bottom. This is super popular. I think it's most people's first paddle. It was my first paddle. It's $100, and I would honestly recommend that to everybody. I have an example of their upgraded version, which is the Saga. It has a very cool design on the front. This paddle was great. I played it pretty much non-stop for about 3 months, but then I switched to another paddle, which I have here as well. And I think this one is also close to 100, maybe 120, but very close to be competitive. And between that and the Prism Flash, you can pretty much have your pick. But there's a bunch of people that sell 1.5s, and feel free to do your research. I'm just telling you what I bought. Gen 2 is the next step. This was for the first time introduced thermoforming. Up until this point, most paddles were constructed by a cold press or sandwich basically model. It's you got the polypropylene, the plastic, facing material, and you kind of press it all together cold, and it would stick together via glue or maybe another tool like that. So this was the first time forever that heat was introduced. There's one company in particular that made this really popular, which was Legacy. Kind of a dying brand now, which is sad to see, but they were probably the first ones to introduce this thermoforming process, and then Vatic, and then Yola, and then a bunch of other people also jumped in and made it very popular. In the beginning, there were some growing pains. You know, things would break. The polypropylene would break in particular. It would call something called crow crushing. And you could test your paddle today if it's broken. Maybe you have an old model just by pressing your thumbs into it. If it's like crackling, something like that, it's probably broken. But I would say overall, this issue has been fixed. I mean, this is like 2-year-old tech at this point, so it does happen. I'm not gonna say it doesn't happen. I have one that's broken. It wasn't supposed to break. This was already past that, you know, growing pain period. But overall, it has been fixed. So the next generation that we have after this is Gen 3, and this is, I would say, the most common today, and what you're gonna see pretty much across the board. One model in particular, but Gen 3 takes the concept of 1.5 Gen 1.5 and introduces that to thermoform paddles or Gen 2 paddles. So this is a hot pressed paddle, which also has a ton of foam on the edges. Um, in this aspect, they added much more foam than that first iteration, and that greatly increased the power and the pop, and greatly increased the chance that it would break. So much so that the first few examples of this to ever come out, Vatic was one of those people that likes to jump on it, and so is Yola. Both of theirs were banned, approved and then banned, so it was kind of confusing and touchy subject probably for both of those companies, and touchy subject for the governing body, which is the USAP. The Vaticoni and the Yola Gen 3 are the ones I'm referencing, those models that got banned. Um, and it still is an issue today. I think most Gen 3, all Gen 3 paddles still break. You know, maybe they'll last longer than some of the other guys, and maybe they say they won't break, but they break. I haven't seen one Gen 3 or one company be completely invulnerable to this, and I think you're going to see that across the internet, that most reviewers or most people would say that they break. You can still buy them, you can still use them, and when they break, they just hit harder, but they also become less controllable, especially with dinks in the soft game. You're going to notice it. Um, but everybody uses them. I have one right here. This is the J2K Plus, which is a Gen 3 model. I also have the regular J2K. This is the one I referenced that it broke. It crunches. I don't know if you can hear it, but hopefully you can. But it broke. And I loved both of these. I got the J2K Plus after the J2K one because, well, it broke, so I didn't want to use it. And I use the Gen 3 right now, and I know it'll break, and I'm okay with that as long as you go into it knowing that it's gonna break, and you don't spend a bunch of money for that paddle. And there's definitely models that are worth a bunch of money. Um, then just you're going into that knowing that. So I'm giving you a heads up, and most people will tell you that as well. So I think the most popular model for this is no argument is the Yola Pro 4 at this point. But even before that, it was the 3S. Everybody uses this. You're gonna see it at every park you go to, every court you go to. It's a crazy popular paddle, and it's really really good. I mean, it really is. It's expensive as heck, but it's really good, and it feels great to hit. And now we're up to the new point, which is Gen 4, and supposedly called Gen 4. I think maybe we get rid of the naming convention, but it is called Gen 4 at this point, which is a fully foam paddle. We're finally at the breaking point where plastic and polypropylene is getting completely taken out of the paddle, and the full thing is foam. I would say the first iteration of this, and the one that really got popular at the beginning of this year, was the Carbon True Foam Genesis. That came with two models, I think a hybrid and elongated, which I'm not going to get into now, but I'm just talking about generation technology. That paddle is really, really popular, and there's probably only other two that aren't in pre-order status or prototype or whatever you want to call it, and both of those are very, very popular. Um, and this summer and July in particular looks like it's going to be huge. There's a bunch of new foam paddles coming out, which are going to be crazy. Foam is different though when it is a full form like that. Like the True Foam didn't really hit that hard, and coming from the rep of Gen 3, like more foam meant power, right? But not in this case. It was a really controlled paddle. It was a great paddle to use, and it was fantastic. So these Gen 4 models, particularly some of the new ones coming out, are going to hit crazy, crazy hard. It feels like the beginning of the Gen 2 technology, the thermoforming turnaround, where all these companies are finally jumping on the hype, which was started by Carbon, and they definitely deserve credit for that because that paddle took probably over 2 years from conception to release. There's always rumors, oh, it's going to come out, it's going to come out, and it finally did, and people really love it. I mean, I think with that weight is definitely a high competitor, but there's a bunch coming out. Vatic's doing one, Honolulu's doing one, Groove is doing one, Body Helix is doing one. I'm sure there's other ones out there that are in prototype model or prototype phase, and they're all crazy, crazy popular. So I hope this was helpful. Please leave a comment if anything I missed. I have three of the generations: the 1.5, which is the Saga, the J2K, which is Generation 2 model, Gen 2 model. It broke unfortunately, but I did love this thing. And then when that broke, I got the J2K Plus. And that's what I have at the moment. And I hope to get a phone one soon. Maybe I'll get one this summer, hopefully for my birthday. So it's a really exciting time to get into pickleball. I hope I can help you buy a paddle if you're interested in my opinion. I am a big nerd about this stuff, and a lot of people are nerds about this stuff. So again, leave a comment if I missed anything or if you had something to mention that I didn't. Thank you again for coming to the channel, and please subscribe. Thanks.